Canton townies sing this song, doo-da, doo-da. Canton corruption all day long, oh doo-da day. Okay folks, I fixed the volume by the way. We're back in action. I have the 200-page document of the investigative report into Kevin Albert. Now, if you want the short version, Turtle Boy has published a short version for you, taking the highlights and discussing them. And you can find that by hitting the latest button on his website. I'm going to read the whole 200 pages of this document just to see what else is in there. So buckle up, because it's going to take a while. The confidential draft investigatory findings submitted to the Town of Canton on September 10th, 2024 by Attorney Terence M. Delahaney. That'll do. Logistical information. On or about June 15th, 2024. What was that date? Helena Rafferty of Canton Police Department engaged my services to investigate an incident that was highlighted during the Karen Reid trial. The investigation concerns an issue involving Detective Kevin Albert of the Canton Police Department Detective Unit related to an incident that occurred in July 2022. The investigation began on June 17th, 2024 and continued through to the end of August 2024. The primary focus of the investigation is to determine whether Albert misplaced or lost his service firearm and badge during a cold case investigation in the town of Sandwich. I actually looked up what kind of cold cases are going on in the town of Sandwich, and I did find one particularly interesting one, but I don't want to talk about it right now. It may not even be related, but it is an interesting one, and it could have been related, I don't know. The scope of this investigation. The scope of this investigation involves a fact-finding review of an incident that occurred in July 2022, during which Albert and Trooper Michael Proctor travelled to Sandwich, Massachusetts, to conduct interviews related to a cold case. The investigation aims to determine if 1. Albert misplaced or lost his firearm and badge during the investigation, 2. The loss or misplacement was properly reported through the appropriate chain of command, and 3. Any policies, rules or regulations were violated. Additionally, the investigation will provide recommendations based on current trends and best practices in policing as they relate to any issues identified. Well, as far as current trends and best practices in Massachusetts, let's just end it there. They investigate themselves, they find they've done nothing wrong, and it's all over. Because you all know that that's the result of this anyway. Documents and information received and or reviewed. Exhibit 1. Administrative leave letter from Chief Helena Rafferty to Albert. Exhibit 2. Notice of outside investigator from Chief Helena Rafferty to Albert. Exhibit 3. Preservation order from Chief Helena Rafferty to Albert. Exhibit 4. Order from Chief Helena Rafferty to Albert for communications between Albert and Proctor. Exhibit 5. Attendance records. Exhibit 6. Union contract. Exhibit 7. Policy and procedures, internal affairs. Exhibit 8. Rules and regulations. Exhibit 9. Relevant portions of testimony of Proctor during the Karen Reid trial. Exhibit 10. Order from Chief Helena Rafferty to Albert for credit card records. Exhibit 11. ALM and GL Chapter 38, Section 4, District Attorney's Jurisdiction. Exhibit 12. More sections. Exhibit 13. More sections. Exhibit 14. Credit card and debit card transactions submitted by Albert. Exhibit 15, texted messages between Albert and Proctor. And Exhibit 16, transcript of Proctor's initial interview provided by the state police. About the only things that I would say are going to be true and accurate are going to be the sections of the law cited. It's just my premonition. It's not like I've got a crystal ball or anything. Interviews. The interviews of all witnesses in this investigation were coordinated directly by the investigator. They began on July 8th, 2024 and continued through to August 14th, 2024. Each interview was scheduled in 1 or 2 hour sessions. The investigator interviewed Canton Police Department officials at varying ranks with first or second hand knowledge of the cold case investigations being conducted by Procter and Albert. All Town of Canton employees who were interviewed were informed that the investigator was hired to perform an independent, neutral and non-biased fact-finding investigation. The investigator explained to each person interviewed that the investigator is a Massachusetts licensed attorney at law and that he does not represent the town of Canton, the Canton Police Department, or any member of the community or police force, and that the investigator was hired solely as an independent, non-biased fact finder. We shall see. Terence. All interviews were conducted in person by attorney Terence Delahanty. Portions of this report are summaries of interviews, not verbatim transcripts. Well, what's the bloody good of ya? Where's the verbatim transcripts? Phone interview with attorney David Yannetti. Woo! Lord Daddy. On July 8th, 2024, this investigator contacted attorney David Yannetti via email to obtain any pertinent information relevant to the investigation that was not subject to a protective order. Attorney Yannetti responded and indicated that he believed his team did not possess any additional information beyond what had already been presented in court, or the text messages held by the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Massachusetts. These text messages had already been requested directly from the United States Attorney's Office. Interview of Lieutenant Paul Gallagher. This investigator scheduled an interview with Lieutenant Paul Gallagher for July 31st, 2024 at 11 a.m. at Canton Town Hall, room 208. At the start of the interview, Gallagher was informed that it would be recorded as required by the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, and he consented to the recording. Yet we don't have a transcript. Interesting. Background. According to Gallagher, he was hired as a permanent police officer by the Canton Police Department on April 1st, 1992 and became a full-time officer in 1994. He was promoted to detective in 2000 and in 2000 was assigned to the DEA Drug Task Force, where he served for 13 years. Gallagher was promoted to sergeant in 2017 and to detective sergeant in 2018 after he'd left the DEA Task Force. In August of 2021, he was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and part of his responsibilities included hiring internal affairs, background checks, and overseeing the detectives and various shifts. Gallagher indicated he had never been the subject of an internal affairs investigation and was in good standing with Post. Lord knows how. Cold case assignment. Gallagher confirmed that in July 2022 he was the lieutenant in charge of the detective unit. He acknowledged that Albert was assigned to a cold case investigation in September 2021. Due to the ongoing nature of the investigation, specific details were not discussed and the case was referred to generically as a cold case. Gallagher explained that the case was initiated when a citizen submitted newspaper articles to the deputy chief, who then forwarded them to Gallagher for further investigation. Since the case fell under the District Attorney's Office jurisdiction, Procter was assigned through the District Attorney's Office. Conflict checking. The investigator asked if the department conducts conflict checks before assigning cases to detectives. Gallagher explained that detectives sometimes self-report conflicts. Oh really? Self-reporting. No wonder things are falling apart. and in other cases the department intervenes to prevent employees from working on certain cases due to a conflict, which the department then promptly ignores, apparently. He noted that, as a small town, Canton has many personal connections which can often benefit investigators. Well, herein lies the problem. Overtime procedures. Gallagher explained the overtime obligations and the balance between flex time and overtime within the detective unit. He noted that there is a 3-hour minimum for overtime, meaning if a day shift officer is required to stay beyond their shift for an investigation, they are compensated for at least 3 hours. Detectives must obtain approval for overtime in advance unless they are already on duty and required to stay longer due to assisting the patrol division or responding to a patrol division's request. Regarding Albert's overtime for the trip to Sandwich, Gallagher clarified that the detectives enter their own overtime into the system and include comments in the attendance roster, noting the case name or number to indicate the reason. Gallagher confirmed that Albert is known for diligently requesting overtime approval in advance. While Gallagher does not specifically recall the July 19th, 2022 overtime request, he is confident that Albert followed the proper procedures and requested permission for the assignment. I'm sure he did. Breaks. Gallagher was asked about lunch breaks for detectives and whether there is a set time limit for them. He confirmed that lunch and dinner breaks are provided, typically lasting 30 minutes for patrol officers. Detectives, however, usually have more flexible breaks, often eating quickly and returning promptly to work. Gallagher emphasised that the extended breaks beyond an hour are not customary and would exceed departmental expectations. He also stated that consuming alcohol during breaks is strictly prohibited by the rules, regulations and practices of the Canton Police Department. Shall we sit here and go through all of the things that Gallagher said I don't know to during his testimony? Because he seems to know a lot about, protocols and practices here, where during court testimony he hardly knew anything. Badge and gun. Gallagher was asked whether Albert had reported misplacing or losing his badge. He stated that he had not received any such reports from Albert and was unaware until recently of any discussions about the badge being misplaced. When asked if he would consider a badge left in another police officer's unmarked cruiser as lost or misplaced, Gallagher explained that he would not. Of course he wouldn't. He noted that in his experience, officers who use badge belt clips often remove them for comfort when seating, and he himself frequently removes his belt clip while driving, considering it neither lost nor misplaced. Yeah, but it's a slightly different story, Gallagher. Like, he left it in the cruiser and then left the cruiser. Gallagher was also asked if he had any knowledge of Albert allegedly misplacing a firearm. He stated he was not aware of such an incident. Additionally, Gallagher mentioned that he does not use social media and had not discussed the matter with anyone other than the chief. Herein lies another problem. Estimated travel time and interview time. Gallagher was asked about the duration of an investigative interview in Sandwich, including travel time. He estimated that the interview itself could take between 1 to 1.5 hours, with total duration including travel being 3 to 5 hours. Gallagher stated that he had no knowledge of whether Albert stopped for dinner during the visit, but noted that he would not find it unusual if they were in Sandwich for an extended period of time into the evening. Regarding alcohol consumption, Gallagher confirmed that it would be against the Canton Police Department's rules, regulations and practices to consume alcohol while on duty, while on duty, including during lunch or dinner breaks. Yet he did. Interview of Detective Albert. In communication with Union Attorney Jennifer Smith, blah blah blah, an interview with Albert was conducted on August 14th, 2024 at 1:30 p.m. Please note that any delay in scheduling the interview was outside the control of the town and Albert. The interview was conducted at Canton Town Hall as scheduled. At the start of the interview, both the attorney and Albert were informed that the interview would be recorded as required by the Police Officer Standards and Training Commission. Both the attorney and Albert consented to the recording. Background information. Albert provided the following background information about his employment with the Canton Police Department. He was hired as a police officer in 2005 and served in a school resource officer role. Approximately 5 years ago, he was demoted to... he was promoted to detective. Albert confirmed that he has no disciplinary issues or complaints filed with Post during his tenure. He is currently with all in-service training and is certified... He is current with all in-service training and is certified by Post as a police officer. Albert was in plain clothes and had his badge and firearm with him when he entered Proctor's cruiser on July 19, 2022. Cold case assignment. Albert explained that Gallagher assigned him the cold case investigation on or about September or October of 2021. He believed that a relative of the victim contacted the Canton police, prompting Gallagher to ask him to investigate. Albert and Proctor had been conducting interviews sporadically throughout the year. When they identified a person of interest, they scheduled an interview with that individual in Sandwich on July 19, 2022. Travel and interview details. Travel arrangements. On July 18, 2022, the day before the trip to Sandwich, Albert and Proctor communicated by text. During that conversation, it was decided that Proctor would drive them to Sandwich on 19th of July 2022. When asked about his comment, "soak up the overtime," Albert explained it was a tongue-in-cheek joke, implying that they would stop for dinner since they would be out for an extended period. Overtime practices. Albert confirmed the overtime practices of the Canton Police Department as discussed during Gallagher's interview. Officers receive a minimum of 3 hours of pay for overtime work and then are compensated on an hour-for-hour basis thereafter. Additionally, if an officer works into the next hour, they are paid for the entire hour, not just the fractional part. Trip details. Albert stated that he drove to work on July 19th and worked the day shift, typically from 7:45 to 3:45 p.m., after which he went on overtime. He recalled that Proctor picked him up at the Canton Police Department around 4:40 or 4:45 p.m. The drive to Sandwich took approximately an hour and 20 minutes with no stops made. The interview in Sandwich lasted approximately 1 hour to 1.5 hours. They attempted to locate another individual but were unsuccessful. Return trip and dinner. Dinner location. On the return trip to Canton, Albert and Proctor stopped at Flanders Field in Hanover. Albert could not recall his exact order but believed it was likely a burger or chicken and an appetizer. When asked about alcoholic beverages, Albert said he did not specifically recall ordering a beer but acknowledges it was certainly possible. He stated he would take full responsibility for ordering 1 or 2 beers, but he did not recall what kind they were, and of course he didn't. I'm guessing they weren't lights. Dinner was estimated to take about 1 hour, and the drive from Sandwich to Hanover was estimated at 45 minutes to 1 hour. Albert did not remember who paid for the dinner, but stated that they typically split the bill. He did not request reimbursement from the town of Canton for the dinner. Badge and firearm handling. During dinner, Albert explained that he usually removes both his badge and firearm during dinner because they are cumbersome. He stated that Proctor's vehicle was equipped with a safe and a lock-in glove box. Albert stated the firearm was located in the glove box directly in front of him, and that he believed he placed the badge, flipped it over so it was not visible, in the console. Missing badge. Albert realised that his badge was left in Proctor's cruiser the following day when Proctor texted him about it. Albert confirmed that he did not report the missing badge, as he was informed prior to going to work that morning that it was indeed in the vehicle. Other details. Return to Canton. Albert estimated the drive from Hanover to Canton took 40 to 45 minutes. He was dropped off at the Canton police station between 10:10 and 10:30 p.m. Albert confirmed he took his gun when he was dropped off at the Canton police station, and explained that a text message about leaving his gun was a joke. Of course it was. Post-interview activities. Upon returning home, Albert watched television and had a couple of IPAs, describing a couple as about 2 or 3 drinks. And then just a minute ago, he didn't remember what sort of drinks he drank. Clearly they were IPAs. Communications with Proctor. According to Albert, his last communication with Proctor was in July 2023. He has not discussed this investigation with anyone other than his wife, legal counsel, and union representatives. Albert also confirmed Proctor had never been to his house. Supplemental interview of Detective Albert. On August 29th, Albert's attorney contacted me regarding the financial records I had requested at the end of Albert's initial interview. Specifically, we discussed the debit and or credit card statements pertinent to the investigation. We agreed it was necessary to bring Albert back in to explain the charges made to a credit card on July the 19th, 2022, the same day they were in Sandwich. The supplemental interview with Albert took place on September the 4th, 2024. During this interview, Albert noted that while retrieving and reviewing the requested statements, he realised that he and Proctor had made 2 stops after their interview in Sandwich. The first stop, Treehouse Brewing Company, Sandwich. Transaction, 2 charges, $34 and $70.80. Explanation. Albert stated that the $34 transaction was for alcoholic beverages consumed on the premises, including tip and tax, and he believes there were 2 alcoholic drinks ordered. The $70.80 transaction was for beverages purchased to go, also including tax. These beverages were intended for a trip to New Hampshire a few days later. Albert estimated that they spent no more than 30 minutes at Treehouse Brewing Company, which he thought closed around 7:30 p.m. or 8 p.m. This information was corroborated by Treehouse Brewing Company's website, which states that they close at 8 p.m. on Tuesdays, with the last order for drafts being 30 minutes before closing. So that doesn't make sense. Last order for drafts being 30 minutes before closing. So they had to have gotten there before the 30 minutes, or else they couldn't order the drafts. I'm assuming drafts are a type of beer, by the way. Investigation of the Treehouse Brewing Company. On September 4, 2024, I visited Treehouse Brewing Company in Sandwich and spoke with the on-duty manager. I inquired if she could provide an itemised receipt for specific transactions from July 2022. White attempted to access transactions but could not retrieve records beyond 1 year. She referred me to a supervisor, whom I contacted by email. As of the writing of this report, I have not received a response from her supervisor regarding the itemised receipt for Albert's transactions. Second stop, Flanders Field, Hanover. Charge $68. This stop on the drive back from Sandwich was discussed during Albert's initial interview and aligns with the information he has previously provided. The charge was for an order consisting of an appetizer, entree, 2 alcoholic drinks, tax and gratuity. I found Albert's statements during both interviews to be forthcoming, truthful and reasonable. Yeah, nah, I don't agree with you. First of all, he couldn't have arrived at that bar half an hour before and only been at the bar for half an hour and still drank 2 beers. Secondly, joking about leaving his gun in the car, yeah, I don't know about that either, because when we have a look at the text exchange between them, which Turtle Boy has diligently recorded for us, Albert says it was bad. I was super hungover for sure. So, it doesn't seem like he was joking. And he's talking about, hair of the dog that bit him to tackle the hangover. So yeah, I'm not getting joking out of any of this. So I disagree with you, Terry. 5. Finding of fact. The below facts are drawn from the records provided and interviews conducted. It should be noted that some records provided for the purpose of this investigation were done so in confidence. 1. Albert was hired by the Canton Police Department in 2005. 2. Albert served as a school resource officer and then was promoted to detective approximately 5 years ago. 3. Albert was supervised by Gallagher. 4. The Deputy Chief of the Canton Police Department received some correspondence about a cold case from 1980. Okay. The case that I saw was from 2014. We have to do some more research, guys. 5. The correspondence requested further investigation of the matter. 6. That information was forwarded to Gallagher. 7. In September or October of 2021, Gallagher assigned Albert to the cold case investigation. 8. Albert reached out to the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office to request that someone be assigned to the investigation consistent with Chapter 38, Section 4 of the Massachusetts General Laws. Since the fall of 2021, Albert and Proctor intermittently conducted interviews and research related to that cold case. On July 18, 2022, Albert and Proctor exchanged text messages about travelling to Sandwich, Massachusetts to conduct an interview for the cold case. 11. They agreed to travel to Sandwich on July 19th. 12. In the July 18th, 2022 text messages, Proctor mentioned knowing a good place in Hanover for dinner. On July 19th, good gracious, he's got all these dates back to front. Proctor picked up Albert at the Canton Police Station at approximately 4:40 p.m. 14. Proctor drove himself and the Alberts to Sandwich. 15. No stops were made between the Canton Police Department and Sandwich. 16. The time travelled to Sandwich was approximately 1.5 hours. 17. The interview that was conducted in Sandwich lasted approximately 1 to 1.5 hours. 18. After the interview, Proctor and Albert stopped at the Treehouse Brewing Company in Sandwich. 19. Albert made 2 transactions at the Treehouse Brewing Company, one for $34 and the other for $70.80. 20. The $34 charge was for alcohol consumed on the premises. 21. The charge for $70.80 was for 4 to 5 4-packs of IPA alcoholic beverages that was purchased to take home. 22. After the Treehouse stop, Proctor and Albert drove back to Canton. 23. They stopped for dinner at Flanders Field in Hanover. 24. The travel time from Sandwich to Hanover is approximately 45 minutes. 25. Before entering Flanders Field for dinner, Albert removed his badge and placed it face down in the console area and secured his firearm in the glove box. 26. They spent approximately an hour in the restaurant for dinner. 27. Albert ordered an appetizer, entree, and 1 or 2 beers. 28, Albert made a credit card transaction at Flanders Field in the amount of $68.71. After leaving Flanders Field, they returned to Canton. 30, Albert did not retrieve his badge from Proctor's cruiser. 31, Albert did retrieve his firearm from the glove box. No, he didn't. In the text exchange, he said, I'll leave it in the letterbox for you to grab. 32, Albert did retrieve his 45 4-packs of IPA from Proctor's cruiser. He did not retrieve the gun, but he did retrieve the beers. Albert drove home from the Canton Police Department. Albert drove home at approximately 10:30. Does anyone truly believe that they did not drink their 4 to 5 4-packs of IPA on the way back? Does anyone believe that? Because I don't believe that. But we don't really have anything to prove otherwise, do we? So he can lie all he wants. Seems to be an Albert trait. 34, Albert arrived home at approximately 10:30 p.m. and subsequently had more beers while watching television. You see, I can believe that part, but that they didn't drink them in the car, I do not believe that part. On July 20th, Albert and Proctor exchanged additional text messages. Proctor texted, found your badge in my cruiser this morning. I can leave it in my locker at the gym, drop it off at your station, or leave it in my mailbox. Albert responds, my mailbox. Did I take my gun? Followed by a wincing face emoji. Yeah, see, that's not a joke. That's actually, you're hungover and you forgot that you took your gun. Proctor responded with haha, followed with what's your address? I will drop it off after the gym. 37, Proctor delivered the badge to Albert at the Canton Police Department. 38, on July 20th, Albert texted Proctor a picture of 2 alcoholic drinks with a message, it's bad. I was hungover for sure today. I bet he was. And I bet he wasn't joking. Okay, that's pages 1 to 10. And I'm flogged already. What did I get myself into? I will go to bed, have a good night's sleep, and I will record pages 11 to 20 tomorrow. And hopefully this rain will have racked off by then. So, until tomorrow, friends, be good or be good at it.